We take our first example now. We have to, this example is one where we have to prove certain relations connected with the likelihood ratio. So what we have to prove is, this is the first solved problem in this video. What we have to prove is A. We have to show that expected value of capital lambda raised to n given h1 is equal to the expected value of capital lambda raised to n plus 1 given h0. So in the previous videos I had demonstrated that the likelihood ratio is itself a random variable. It's a function of the received random variable, and hence it becomes a random variable, and it has its own conditional density functions. This was discussed in the earlier videos. So what this first bit of this question asks us is to find out or to show that the expected value of the nth power of lambda, the likelihood ratio, given that h1 is true, will be equal to the expected value of the n plus 1th power of the likelihood ratio given h0 is true. And the second bit is expected value of likelihood ratio given h0 is equal to 1. That is the second bit. And then we have to show that expected value of the likelihood ratio given h1 minus expected value of likelihood ratio given h0 is equal to the variance of the likelihood ratio given h0. So we will do this one by one, and I will start by first solving B, because that result may be required later while solving A or C. So we will start with B. We will first try to show that expected value of the likelihood ratio given h0 is true is equal to 1. So here some recollection of some background is required here, some background theory. So we will quickly do that. Suppose y is a random variable and it is a function of another random variable x. And we know this, y is a random variable, and this itself is an example. Likelihood ratio is itself an example. Likelihood ratio is a random variable and it is a function of the received random vector r or random variable r. So y is a function of x where y and x are random variables. Now expected value of y will be equal to, that is the average of y has to be equal to the expected value of f of x, because y is f of x. That means that integral y py dy, that is y into the density function of y. Y will have a density function which we can easily compute. At least we know that in principle it is possible to arrive at the density function of y given the density function of x. That means we can calculate the expected value of y through this relation where the integration is over the entire range, will be equal to, since expected value of y is the same as expected value of fx, I can write it as equal to this. So this information will be handy, will make it easier to understand the way we are going to solve the bit B first. So now we will move on to the solution of this part. So we will solve only B first, and then we will go for A and C. So we have to show now that expected value of lambda, the likelihood ratio given h0, is equal to 1. This is what we are supposed to show, the identity that we have to prove. So we note that likelihood ratio is a function of, or rather it is equal to, so since we are just having lambda here, we are talking about the binary hypothesis testing case, not the multiple hypothesis testing case which we discussed in the previous video. So PRH1 RH1 divided by PRH0 RH0. Now we can rewrite this. We can rewrite this by bringing this denominator over here. We can rewrite as capital lambda R into PRH0 RH0 is equal to PRH1 or H1, which is a simple manipulation. Now we integrate both sides. We integrate both sides over the entire range of R. Now, by definition of a density function, the right hand side has to be 1 because you are integrating the density function over all possible values which the random variable or the random vector can take. And on the left hand side, what you have is something similar to this. You have something similar to this. So this on the left hand side has to be equal to the expected value of the likelihood ratio given H0 is true. So this becomes expected value of the likelihood ratio given H0, and that completes our solution to the first, the second bit, that is bit B of the problem, where we were asked to show that this is equal to 1. So that completes the question bit B. Now we go to the A part of the question, wherein we have to show that expected value of lambda raised to n given H1 is expected value of lambda raised to n plus 1 given H0. So for this, we start with this is equal to density function of R given H1 raised to n, because lambda R, you know what is the likelihood ratio is PRH1 by PRH0. So simply raise it to that ratio, we simply raise to the power n. Now we can write this as equal to n plus 1, that is raise this by 1 more, and to compensate that you write this over here. And now we take this term, over here. We take this term over here. So we will have lambda raised to n into density function of R given H1 is equal to the density function of R given H1 raised to n plus 1 divided by the density function of R given H0 raised to n. So this now becomes, once you bring it over here, it becomes now I have brought it here and I have written it down here, and I have this n raised to the power n plus 1 as it is here, And instead of this, I will write, instead of raising it to the power n, I will raise it to the power n plus 1. And to compensate for that one extra PR(S0) in the denominator, we will write, we will have 1 over here, so that this will compensate. Now if you see, this is nothing but lambda raised to n plus 1, because it is PRH1 divided by PRH0 raised to n plus 1. So this is nothing but lambda raised to n plus 1. Now if we integrate both sides over the entire range of the values that R can take, I will not write it down here. If you just simply integrate both the sides over the entire range of values R can take, you will get this as equal to an expected value of lambda raised to n given h1. Remember what we had discussed in the beginning. Integral fx density function of x dx is equal to expected value of fx. This is the same thing that applies here. You can treat this as a function of r, that is fx, and this is the density function of x, that is the density function of r. So you integrate, you get the expected value of lambda raised to n given h1 equal to, and this will be expected value of lambda raised to n plus 1 given h0, because this density function is of r given h1, this density function is of r given h0. So this is what we were supposed to prove. It's over here. So that completes the solution to the part B or part A of the question. Now the last part, that is part C. So we have to show that expected value of lambda given h1 minus expected value of lambda given h0 is equal to the variance of lambda given h0. Now here, from what we proved just now, we know that expected value of lambda h1 is equal to expected value of lambda raised to 2 h0. This is based on what we just showed now, that is the part bit A of the question. We showed this just now. Lambda raised to n given h1 is equal to expected value of lambda raised to n plus 1 given h0. Take n as 1 and you get this. So this has been proved just now. So we'll write it straight away. So we know that this is true. And also we know that expected value of lambda given h0 is equal to 1. This is the second part B, which we had proved earlier. So we know this is also true. Now this means that expected value of lambda given h1 minus expected value of lambda given h0 is equal to, now expected value of lambda given h1 is expected value of lambda square given h0. So this I will write as expected value lambda square given h0 minus expected value of lambda given h0 is equal to 1. And hence, and since it is equal to 1, we have shown that this is equal to 1. So since it is equal to 1, this I can write as expected value of lambda square given h0 minus expected value of lambda given h0 whole square, because this is anyhow 1. So if I square it, it doesn't change, the relation doesn't change. And this, if you see, it is nothing but expected value of, say, x square minus expected value of x whole square. That is, you take the second moment of a random variable, which is nothing but this. Of course, it is under the condition that h0 is true. That doesn't matter here. So second moment minus square of the mean. That is nothing but the variance. So this is equal to variance of lambda given h0. Hence proved. So that completes the solution to the first problem. Okay, next question is this. This is the second problem that we'll be solving. We are given PRH0 is equal to, of course it's not a random vector, so I will not write as a vector. PRH0 is equal to 1 by root of 2 pi sigma e power minus r square by 2 sigma square. A zero mean normal distribution, Gaussian distribution with variance sigma square. That is PRH0. And PRH1 is equal to 1 by root of 2 pi sigma e power minus r plus m square by 2 sigma square. So this is a Gaussian distributed random variable. That is, when h1 is true, what we receive is a Gaussian distributed random variable with mean minus m and variance sigma square. And finally, so we are given a conditional density function of R given h2 is the true hypothesis as equal to this. Again, zero mean, Gaussian distributed with mean m and variance sigma square. Mean m is a positive number, and we are also told that the costs are such that cost for a wrong decision is equal to 1 whenever I is not equal to j. Cost for a wrong decision is 1 and cost for correct decision is 0. So C and is equal to 0 when I is equal to j. So this is the cost. And probability of occurrence of the hypothesis is the same. H0, P0 is 1 by 3, P1 is 1 by 3, P2 is 1 by 3. We have to obtain a decision rule and show the decision regions. This is the question. So we have to obtain it. So this is an example of a multiple hypothesis testing problem. We have to obtain a decision rule and we have to show the decision regions. So for the given conditions, for the given cost conditions, that is cost for wrong decision is 1 and correct decision is 0, and also since the probability of occurrence of the three hypotheses is the same, we have discussed this earlier when we developed the theory in the previous video, and we know that this is the way we are going to take a decision. This was developed in the previous video towards the end of the previous video, and this was then followed by a generic diagram where we could show the decision regions. So here we are going to specify, make it more specific. So, and then lambda 2 is compared with lambda 1 and decision is taken like this. And finally, lambda 2 is compared with 1. Just as we compared lambda 1 with 1, we compare lambda 2 with 1. And we take decision like this. More than 1 means H2 or H0. Less than 1 means H0 or H1. So this is how we are going to take this decision, and we know how the likelihood ratios are defined here. Lambda 1 is PRH1 by PRH0, lambda 2 is PRH2 by PRH0. So we can now draw, without explicitly finding out the likelihood ratios, because we are used to likelihood ratios now. They are nothing but ratios of density functions. So we can simply plot the density functions, and your decision rule is this. We have developed the decision rule and we have given the definition of the likelihood ratios. So we can simply plot, to show the decision regions, we can simply plot the three density functions. let's say this is m, value of m is not given, we are only told it is a positive number, so we write it somewhere here, m could be 3 or 5, whatever it is, and this is minus m, equidistant from 0 on this side, and the PR H naught is this. This is PR H naught. Because PR H naught has a mean 0, it was written here a short while ago. And this is PR H2. It has a mean m, and this is PR H1. They are all of the same spread because sigma is same, variance is the same. This is PR H1, its mean is minus m. Now this likelihood ratio is PR H1 by PR H naught. We know that lambda 1 is PR H1 by PR H naught. And whenever lambda 1 is more than 1, we say H1 or H2. So PR H1, whenever PR H1 is more than PR H naught, we are saying either H1 or H2. Because if I write down this over here and take this over here, basically this becomes a comparison between PR H1 and PR H0. And when PR H1 is more than PR H0, we declare either H1 or H2. So wherever PR H1 is more than PR H0, PR H1 is more than PR H0. So this is the region. PR H1 here is more than PR H0. So in this region, that is on the left here, where PR H1 is more than PR H0, we say it is either H1 or H2. And if PR H1 happens to be less than PR H0, it is either H0 or H2. That means on this side, if you see, PR H1 is less this side. PR H1 is less than PR H0 always. So this is for H0 or H2, this side. Now comes this comparison. Now we go for this comparison. Again, we know that lambda 2 is PR H2 by PR H0. Lambda 2 is PR H2 by PR H0. So this comparison becomes a comparison between PR H2 and PR H0. Whenever PR H2 is more than PR H0, we say it is H2 or H1. So whenever PR H2 is more than PR H0, PR H2 is more than PR H0 in this side. PR H2 is more than PR H0. So whenever it is more, PR H2 is more than PR H0, we say it is H2 or H1. And if it is the other way, that is PR H0 is more than PR H2, PR H0 is more than PR H2 in this region. PR H0 is more than PR H2. So in this region, on this side, it is either H0 or H1. As you can see, whenever PR H0 is more, PR H0 is more than PR H2, it is H0 or H1. And finally, we have this comparison, which is a simple one, because either side you have PRH0 in the denominator. So basically you are comparing PRH2 on this side with PRH1 on this side. So it's basically a comparison between PRH2 and PRH1. So if PRH2 is more than PRH1, PRH2 is more than PRH1. So by symmetry we can say that PRH2 and PRH1 meet here. They take the same value here. This is PRH2, there is PRH1. So whenever PRH2 is more than PRH1, it is H2 or H0. PRH2 more than PRH1, that is this range. This range, that is on the right here from 0. On the right here from 0, PRH2 is more than PRH1. So when PRH2 is more than PRH1, we say that it is H2 or H0. And when PRH1 is more, that is on this side, PRH1 is more than PRH2 because PRH1 takes more value, larger value here compared to PRH2. So this side on the left here, if you see, that is this region, PRH1 is more than PRH2. PRH1 is more than PRH2 and it is H1 or H0. Now having obtained this bifurcation, we have to now, from either or, we have to identify only one of the hypotheses in these various regions. So towards that, we first see that this region, if you see, and if you see all these, because this side it is H0 or H2, this side it is H1 or H0, this side it is H2 or H0, and this side it is H0 or H1. So if you compare all this, if you see all this, you see that H0 is common in this region. So if you see all the either ors, you see that H0 is common in this region. And it is intuitively satisfying because PRH0 is the largest in this region. So this region now, this region, that is R, from this point to this point, from this point to this point, whenever R is in this range, we can declare H0 is a true hypothesis because we saw that of all the either ors, H0 is common in this region. And also, as I said, intuitively it is satisfying because PRH0 is maximum here. And similarly, you can see that this side is H2 or H1, and then again we had H2 or H0 and all those things. As you can follow, it has become a bit crammy here, but the same principle you can apply, and you can see that this side, on this side, H2 is the true hypothesis. So whenever R is more than this, and this point you can easily find out, you have to find out the point of intersection between PRH0 and PRH2. Similarly, this is the point of intersection between PRH0 and PRH1. We will not spend time on that. That is how it is done. And this side will be for H1. Again, this is intuitively satisfying because PRH2 is the largest here in this region. PRH2 has more value than PRH0 and PRH1. Similarly, this side, PRH1 is the largest compared to PRH0 and PRH2. So this is the solution to the second problem. Now move on to the last problem, the third one in this video. And in this problem, we will be developing the receiver operating characteristics for a case where we are told that PR, it's not a vector again, so just write PR H0, R H0 is 1 by 2 e power minus absolute value of R, magnitude R, for R minus 2 plus infinity, that is entire range of values of R. So it is actually a double exponential distribution which is also called as a Laplacian distribution, and PRH1 is also double exponential, but it is shifted to the right by 2 units. So when H0 is the true hypothesis, the received random variable has this distribution, and when H1 is the true hypothesis, the received random variable has this distribution. And we are supposed to obtain the ROC, the receiver operating characteristics, in this particular case. So as we know, the ROC, the receiver operating characteristics, is a plot wherein we have PF and PD marked on the horizontal and vertical axis respectively, and as gamma, the threshold, is varied, we obtain PD as a function of PF. So towards that, what we first do is we plot these two density functions. So always when you plot the density functions, we get a clearer picture. So the plot will look like this, a rough sketch, of course. This will be PRH0, which is e power minus magnitude R 1 by 2. And if I say this is 1, this is 2, then this will be PRH1, which will be nothing but 1 by 2 e power minus R minus 2 magnitude. So this is our density. The given density functions will look like this, a freehand sketch, double exponential or Laplacian distribution. And let us say for the moment that gamma is somewhere here. For visualization purposes, this is gamma, let's say, this is gamma. So whenever we are above gamma, we declare H1 is the true hypothesis, and whenever we are below gamma, the received R is below gamma, less than gamma, we say H0 is the true hypothesis. So that means this area will give us the probability of the receiver declaring H1 as the true hypothesis when H1 is indeed the true hypothesis, which means that this shaded area will be the probability of detection. Similarly, this shaded area, that is this area under this tail of PRH0, is the probability that, so remember it extends to infinity, I just truncated here. This is the probability that the receiver will declare H1 as the true hypothesis when actually H0 was the true hypothesis, which means that this area or the shaded area here, this gives the probability of false alarm. So once we have this, identified this, we can write expressions for PD and PF in terms of gamma, and then we can express PD as a function of PF with some minor manipulation, and then plot PD as a function of PF, and that gives us the receiver operating characteristics. So let us now move towards that. Let us take that step now. So let's write down the expression for probability of detection first. Probability of detection will be equal to, let us say that gamma is less than 2, because we have to vary gamma. So let's say that gamma is less than 2. So when gamma is less than 2, the probability of detection will be, as I have shown here already, it will be this shaded area, and that can be computed as equal to gamma to 2. Remember, gamma is taken as less than 2. Gamma to 2, 1 by 2 e power minus 1 by 2 e power r minus 2, because we are on this side, so r is less than 2, and when r is less than 2, we have to express this as e power r minus 2. You can verify that if r is equal to 1, for example, you will get it as e power minus magnitude minus 1, which will be minus 1. So we have to write it as e power r minus 2, and you can substitute r as equal to 1, and you are indeed getting e power minus 1. Okay, and of course dr plus 2 to infinity. If I integrate this density function, since it is an integration over 1/2, I can straight away write 1 by 2 because gamma to 2 and then 2 to infinity, that is the PD, the probability of detection. So since this integration is written here, 2 to infinity, the result will be 1 by 2 because you are calculating the area under half of the density function, which has to be half because the total area under density function is 1. And this can be written as equal to, I will give the result, I will not integrate this and write the steps, it's a very simple integration, you can verify, and in case you are getting a different result, you can get in touch with me. 1 minus 0.5 e power gamma minus 2. So this is the probability of detection when gamma is, say, less than or equal to 2 on this side. And probability of detection will be, let's say now gamma is more than 2. When gamma is more than 2, the probability of detection will be gamma integral gamma to infinity half e power minus r minus 2 dr, because now you are on the other side of 2. So for example, if you take 3, r is equal to 3, you calculate this, you will get half e power minus magnitude 1, which will be e power minus 1. And if you put 3 here, indeed you get e power minus 1. And this will be equal to, again I will not perform the integration, you can verify it, and in case you get a different answer, you can contact me. So this will be 0.5 e power minus gamma minus 2. So this is for gamma greater than 2. So gamma less than or equal to 2, which means that from gamma minus infinity to 2, this is valid. And you can verify if gamma is equal to minus infinity, what happens is probability of detection becomes 1, as it should. We had discussed this when we discussed ROC. And you can see here, when gamma is equal to infinity, the probability of detection becomes 0. You can substitute gamma as infinity and you can see that it becomes 0. So this range is for gamma 2 to infinity, this is for gamma 2 to minus infinity on the other side. So this we have with us now, the probability of detection. And we can now similarly find out the probability of false alarm, which I will write here. So probability of false alarm will be, again, let us take now gamma as less than 0. Gamma on this side, because gamma less than 0. Let's say gamma is less than 0. Gamma is less than 0. So if gamma is less than 0, the probability of false alarm will be integral gamma to 0 1 by 2 e power r 1 by 2 e power r dr plus 1 by 2. The plus 1 by 2 again comes because you are integrating from gamma, which is assumed to be less than 0, gamma to 0, and then 0 to infinity. 0 to infinity will be, so remember, when gamma is somewhere here, the probability of false alarm is this area. So when gamma is less than 0, we have to integrate from gamma to 0 and then from 0 to infinity. 0 to infinity will be anyhow 1 by 2 because you are integrating 1/2 of the density function. The result will be 1 by 2. And this will be equal to, again, you can perform the integration and see that the result will be equal to 1 minus 0.5 e power gamma. 1 minus 0.5 e power gamma. So this is the probability of false alarm when gamma is less than or equal to 0. That means from gamma minus infinity to 0, this is what it is. Again, you can put gamma as minus infinity and see that the probability of false alarm becomes 1. And if gamma is 0, so interestingly, the probability of false alarm becomes 1 by 2. and the reason must be obvious to you from the figure. And the probability of false alarm is equal to, now for gamma more than 0, when gamma is more than 0, the probability of false alarm is this. So since you are crossing over here, the expression has to be e raised to minus r, 1 by 2 e raised to minus r, and that will be equal to, again the result is equal to 0.5 e power minus gamma. So this is for gamma greater than 0. So we have the probability of detection and probability of false alarm. And you can see again here what happens when gamma is infinity, the probability of false alarm becomes 0. And if gamma is 0, you get 1 by 2 as you got it here, because gamma 0 is the point where you cross over to either side of the density function. Right. So we have these expressions now with us. Now what we do is, we will express PD as a function of PF, and then we can plot the ROC. So this figure is not required anymore. So I will free some space here to express PD as a function of PF. If we observe these ranges, we can see that there are, when we try to express PD as a function of PF, there will be 3 gamma ranges equivalent to 3 PF ranges which will be of interest. Now let me make myself clear here. That is, when gamma is less than or equal to 0, there is a particular expression for PF. And this expression for PF will be applicable when we try to express PD as a function of PF. This expression will be applicable in case where we are considering PD for gamma less than or equal to 2. Because when gamma is less than or equal to 2, or rather when gamma is less than or equal to 0, it is definitely less than or equal to 2. So this range, that is gamma less than or equal to 0, will be the first range of interest to us. So let me just write it like this. So when gamma is less than or equal to 0, this is one range of gamma that I am interested in. Now I will express PD as a function of PF, and you will be able to understand what I am actually doing here, and then the subsequent steps will be clearer, hopefully. So now for gamma less than or equal to 0, we have PF as equal to, we have it here, PF as equal to 1 minus 0.5 e raised to gamma. So that means we can write 0.5 e raised to gamma is equal to 1 minus PF, or e raised to gamma is equal to 2 into 1 minus PF. E raised to gamma is equal to 2 into 1 minus PF. And if you look at PD in the same range, that is gamma less than or equal to 2. So for when gamma is less than or equal to 0, the PD expression that is of relevance is the one which is when gamma is less than or equal to 2. So if you take this expression and substitute for e raised to gamma as this, you will get the first relation between PD and PF. So we will do that here. So I will write, using this I can write PD as equal to 1 minus 0.5 e raised to minus 2 into e raised to gamma. So that e raised to gamma I will write as this, 2 into 1 minus PF. So this is the probability of detection when gamma is less than or equal to 0 as a function of PF. So we can write that now as equal to PD is equal to 1 minus 2 into 0.5 will be 1. So e power minus 2 into 0.5 has become 1 minus PF. And for gamma less than or equal to 0, the expression for PF is this, which says that when gamma is minus infinity, gamma less than or equal to 0 means gamma can range from minus infinity to 0. When gamma is minus infinity, PF is 1. So I can say that this is for this range of PF. When gamma is minus infinity, PF is 1. When gamma is 0, PF is half. So for PF 1 by 2 to 1, probability of detection is 1 minus e power minus 2, 1 minus PF. This is our first expression. So we have now successfully converted one set. We have been able to successfully identify one set of PD and PF values which are valid for PF 1 by 2 to 1. Similarly, now we go for the next state. So this I will just underline and keep it ready here so that we have to plot it next. Now we considered here the range gamma is less than or equal to 0. Next we consider the range gamma greater than 0, less than or equal to 2. We'll take this range now. So when I take this range, gamma is between 0 and 2. Again, we note that the PD expression that is of relevance is this. Because gamma is less than or equal to 2. This range is still less than or equal to 2. It is 0 to 2. But PF is now this that we have to consider. Gamma is greater than 0. Because when gamma is between 0 and 2, gamma is greater than 0. So this PF we have to consider. And from this PF, I can easily write that e raised to minus gamma is 0.5 into, or rather e raised to minus gamma, or rather e raised to gamma is 0.5 by PF. It's a simple, this thing, e raised to gamma is equal to 0.5 by PF. You can see here easily. So when I use that here, my expression becomes probability of detection is equal to 1 minus 0.25 e power minus 2 by PF. I will skip the intermediate steps which I had written here earlier, and I will try to explain it again here. Remember that when gamma is between 0 and 2, we are interested in this PD and this PF. It is this PF and this PD which is relevant. From this PF we can write e raised to gamma as equal to 0.5 by PF. Substitute that e raised to gamma here, e raised to gamma as 0.5 by PF, you will get 1 minus 0.25 e raised to minus 2 by PF. 1 minus 0.25 e raised to minus 2 by PF. And the PF range will be, when gamma is 0 to 2, what happens to PF? For gamma greater than 0, this is the PF as I said. When gamma is 0, PF is 0.5. And when gamma is 0, gamma 0 we have taken, when gamma is equal to 2, it is 0.5 e raised to minus 2. So this gives us the next range which we will be plotting. And now we consider gamma greater than 2. When gamma is greater than 2, that is the third range that we are considering. When gamma is greater than 2, we will be using this PD. And the PF will be this. Gamma is greater than 2 means gamma definitely greater than 0. And what happens is over here, this PD will be considering because gamma is greater than 2. And here anyhow we know that e raised to minus gamma is 2 PF. E raised to minus gamma is 2 PF. So in place of e raised to minus gamma here, substitute 2 PF and you will have the relation as equal to PD is equal to PF e power 2. You can see that e power minus gamma is 2 PF, and for gamma greater than 2, this is the PD that we will be using 0.5 e power minus gamma into e power 2. So 0.5 e power 2, and in place of e power minus gamma you put 2 PF, you will get this as the result. And this is for PF ranging from 0.5 e power minus 2. You can substitute gamma as 2 and you can see that PF ranges from 1 by 2 e power minus 2, that is 0.5 e power minus 2, and when gamma is infinity, PF becomes 0. So this completes the range PF 0 to 1, and this is how you will be getting the relation between PD and PF. Now we have to just plot this to get the receiver operating characteristics. So we do that here now. of course it will be a freehand sketch. I will be showing you only the values for 4 different sets of PFPD. So let me just write down this. You can calculate this again. I repeatedly say, if any of the results are not agreeing with your calculation, you can get in touch with me. So PFPD, I have computed for 4 values. You can write a program for this easily and plot. So PF is 1, 0.75, 0.25, 0. 0.75, 0.5, 0.25, 0, and the corresponding values you can find out. So when PF is 1, even the theory says that, we have discussed the theory, when PF is 1, PD is 1. PF 0.75 means it is between 0.5 and 1. So PF 0.75, if you substitute here, you will get the result as, you can verify, 0.9661. And PF 0.5, you can substitute in any of this, and you can see that when PF is 0.5, 1 minus 0.5 is 1 by 2. So 1 minus 0.5 e power minus 2, you can substitute PF 0.5 here also, you can see 1 minus 0.5 e power minus 2. 1 minus 0.5 e power minus 2 is something like this, very close to this. And 0.25 is also in this range. You can see that this is less than 0.25, this is less than 0.25, and 0.25 is in this range. Substitute PF as 0.25 here, you get 1 minus e power minus 2, compute that, and you get 0.8646, and finally when PF is 0, you have to get PD as 0, even the theory says that. So now we can plot this. It will be a very rough sketch, nevertheless capturing all the effect. Let's say 1, 1, 0.5, 0.75, 0.25, similarly 0.5, 0.25, 0.75, and this will be the PD is equal to PF line. This will be the PD is equal to PF line, a straight line. We know why it is so. We have discussed that in the theory. And the first point, PF is equal to 1, PD is equal to 1. This is the first point. Next, PF is 0.75, PD is 0.966. Probably somewhere here. You can straight away see that it's starting to lie above the PD to PF line. PF is 0.5 and PD is 0.9323. Again somewhere here, it's a very rough sketch. 0.25 is 0.8646, and then you have a 0 for 0. So it will be a sketch like this. This is a rough sketch. You can use a computer code and plot for more points and check for yourself. So this is the ROC that we have been trying to get. So this solves the last problem. So I strongly urge that you can plot this, you can get for more values. If any values are not agreeing with what I have here, any of the results is not agreeing, you can get back to me.